welcome to Crossing Darkness, a podcast about role-playing games set in the world of darkness. We are broadcasting over Twitch Sundays 7 p.m. to 7:45 p.m., give or take, and are open to chatting with fans during the show. This is the season 3, new season for us, episode 1, and we're going to be talking with Rick Heinz here about Seventh Age and just gaming in the 21st century, well, 2020 century, I guess. I'm your host, Frozen Fallout, and my co-host is Motorori, who helped me create a podcast, this podcast, and 40-person, 4-table Gen Con event that included Mage the Ascension, as well as Werewolf the Apocalypse, Hunter the Reckoning, and Vampire the Masquerade that we finished up in 2018. How you doing, Motorori?
Pretty good. Very relaxing weekend.
Awesome. And today we have a very special guest with us today, the creator of Seventh Age, Rick Heinz. How you doing?
I am still surviving. I don't have horns just yet, and the apocalypse has not burned down everything around me. But it's been a hell of a year, actually. So I've been up to all kinds of things. Besides the Seventh Age, I actually turned in my sequel recently. But the sarcasm, the urban fantasy, the role playing, it's been going strong, even in the fact that we storytell online. And I am really jealous. I just realized Mortal Rory here has a fine, tasty cocktail, and I should have prepared myself ahead of time.
Actually, that brings us to our first question. Do you have a bottle of Blueberry Mead?
I do not have Blueberry Mead on me, but Misbehaving Blueberry Mead is seriously one of like my favorite drinks of all time. There's this like really like niche, cute alcohol shop that's like down the street outside of my apartment, and they always like import different meads and different things. They get this new blueberry honeyed mead that is just divine, but it's like $30 a bottle. It's really good, but it's not good for like every weekend drinking, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, no, and full disclosure, I just listened to most of your podcast with Drinking with Authors, where you brought that up. So I know that it's very close to your house, which must be one of the really nice things about living in the Chicago area. The area that Josh and I live in here in Madison, the closest convenient, the closest store is a BP gas station, and then close to that is a Quick Trip, which is nice, but yeah, we got to drive to Woodman's if we want any good alcohol.
Woodman's, I have been there. It is a fine establishment. It's like our Benny's, but no, this place is a small hole in the wall shop, and all they do is stock local brewery and weird eclectic beverages, and it's literally right outside my front door. It's dangerous that it is there, good sir. It is dangerous.
Yeah, especially at $30 a bottle, man. I don't bring my I have this, so
okay.
Don't be too jealous. I'm drinking box wine. I think which you know. Yeah, that's why
I was going to say the Tour de France. At some point, if you're a World of Darkness gamer or you've played Vampire, I think at some point it was like a rite of passage in the early 2000s and whatnot that we were doing Tours de Franzias, before we would play Changeling the Dreaming or something like that. So I've been there. I have done that. I have prayed to the porcelain throne, and
the scariest part is when it's red wine. You feel like you're dying. You're like
because you're spitting blood.
It looks like all of a sudden you have puked up all the blood in your body, and it just is, actually it's scary.
We're talking about this is completely out of the blue. We did not plan this. We're talking about Chicago and we're talking about alcohol. What is your personal relationship with Malort?
Malort. My personal relationship is I got to enjoy Malort and it's all of its finery up when I went up to the Milwaukee Con. I actually believe I met you guys. Midwinter.
Yeah,
Midwinter was the first time that I've ever.
2018.
Yeah. That was the first time that I ever got to imbibe the sweet, delicious nectar that was this fine Chicago exported alcohol, which everybody was like, Rick, you're from Chicago. How have you never had Malort? And I'm like, well, quite simply because I'm from Chicago. But if you haven't tried it, I really recommend that you guys do. It
I
is,
have had it
you know,
twice.
yeah, it's an
I
acquired taste. But I mean, if we're from Chicago, you kind of don't need to.
Mike, unless you
Yeah.
gave it
I,
to me,
I
I don't think I've ever had it.
no,
Oh, you would
you've
know.
had
It's an
to have had it.
experience.
You have, Josh. You haven't had it at any of the Goon Swarms,
Uh, I don't know.
or was that? Well,
Those are
well, you're not much of a
blurs,
drinker.
and I'm not much of a drinker, so I'm there
Yeah,
for the gaming.
yeah. I started to get to the impression that Malort is something that people from Chicago don't drink. They just make other. Whenever they go off from Chicago, they say, "Here, drink this thing. It's from Chicago. You have to drink it." And then they just
If you
laugh at
want to
us.
call yours, if you want to be from Chicago or experience Chicago locally, if you're not from Chicago, a fine glass of delicious Malort will be wonders for your welcoming into the Windy City. That's my
Yeah.
official stance on it. And I know tiny UK British girls that can drink Malort like it is delicious, and they actually enjoy it. So they are out there. They do exist. They don't
Yeah.
live here in Chicago, though.
But anyway, so you said that you drank it at Midwinter, which is where we
Yep.
met. So I think that's probably where we should talk next. Is that I think that was 2018.
Yeah,
Yes. So yeah, I met you guys because you guys were running LARPs and doing your weird table top Gen Con like super events that you guys were planning at the time, and I was selling novels about sarcastic urban fantasy about the end of the world. Since then, since 2018, the biggest project that I've achieved is we actually just launched the Red Opera Kickstarter, where we fused metal with warlocks and 5e and took this band Diamorte, and we took their concept album and I wrote a full warlock campaign set in the Shadelands. And we got done with our Kickstarter in September. It went fantastic. And just on Friday, I submitted all 158,000 words into the layout artist. We added about 75,000 words after the Kickstarter was over in stretch goal content, and I'm happy. Like this year in 2020, I turned in my sequel to my publisher for Seventh Age Dystopia, and Magic Returns, companies brand it. Surprisingly fitting if the apocalypse is going to happen, and the Red Opera. Both of them got turned in on one on Friday, one about 2 weeks prior. And so I get to actually sit back and have a winter vacation and play some games for once.
Yeah. For me, the question that comes up, because Josh and I are more casual gamers. We're not sitting down writing all the time. The big question that I have for you is like, how much time per week were you spending on the Red Opera, like in the past
Oh,
year on average?
shit. Okay, so let me think here. In the beginning, right, when we first started, it was every night, right? When I first write the first draft, it was like every night I'm sitting down, I get done, I spend about 3 or 4 hours to write out like a chapter, an encounter, an act, or go back and re-edit stuff. Um, then once we turn it in to the publisher, there is a pause where you get to like break away and go do something else, and that's kind of nice. But then right before the Kickstarter, about a month and a half, 2 months beforehand, doing the voiceover work, the trailers, the marketing, writing the copy, all the additional content, and then the actual Kickstarter itself, the blog post, the promotion, the reaching out, the marketing materials, and then the Kickstarter is a full 100%. Like I took the first 2 weeks off of work because I mean it was my book, right? Like I had to like really like work extra hard on it, and so I took like the first 2 weeks off of work for the Kickstarter, and just did that as like a full time job. And then after the Kickstarter, I collapsed for a week and I didn't do anything. It was like one of the most exhausting experiences. And other people I know who have run Kickstarters have been like, congratulations, Rick. Welcome to the club. It doesn't get any better, by the way. It's the same thing every time. And then after that, I really wanted to finish. And so I set it up so that I went back to one thing every night, where at 7 o'clock at night, from about 7 to about 1 a.m., uh, I would listen to metal music and I would write, and I would or review somebody else's writing, or like try to bring an encounter or playtest. Wasn't like exact word typing per play, but it was something to do with writing in the project. I would dedicate that time to do. So it was definitely a full-time, or a part-time, part to full-time job based on how you cut it.
What else were you doing in the gaming industry during that time? Was it just that, or because I saw that you ran a game in September, which
Right.
must have been around the time. Um, and you say you've got other games, like home games. Like, are you still playing RPGs, or
So
is it just all this for a while?
No, I still had to budget my time. I do a few different games. I do a thing called the Storyteller's Forge, which is a D&D for kids program where I teach kids ages like 8 to 17 how to become storytellers. And we're partnered up with like a local game store. We have like 200 kids signed up in the program. I
Mhm.
actually have like the whole thing already written and done, but I still run that. And I was doing that about 2 nights a week, or one night a week during that. And any live stream or any game that I ran during this year was probably Red Opera related.
Yeah.
Like I was absolutely like, okay, I'm making this Red Opera. I'm kind of playtesting. I'm also doing some promo at the same time. I did have a private Mage the Ascension Technocracy game that I was running on Discord, where for my adult friends, and some of them were in Milwaukee actually. And the concept of that game was, I still know a lot of LARPers and a lot of friends and a lot of people that play, and they would feed me their worst horror stories that I would get from OWBN or other games that they had been to about the worst masquerade breach they'd ever gotten, or something terrible that would happen. And the plot line of my game, this little Division 7 thing, was these agents would hear that horror story and they had to go on out and fix it and reset the world and make things go and see if they could do it. And it was fun, but I did have to say that running on Discord, especially if it's a text-based game and there's more than like 12 players, it was extremely time-consuming. So I did have to bring that one to an end right around June. I just found I couldn't maintain that game.
Interesting. So that was a text-based Discord game that you kind of did. So was that you kind of was that a like was there certain time periods, or was it just a 24-hour room that was running events, things that were going on, people talking to each other?
Yeah, good idea, bad idea. Good idea. Have a bunch of friends that are all LARPers, invite them into a channel. Let it be 24/7. Bad idea. Be the storyteller of that. It was a 24/7 thing where then occasionally, like once a week or something like that, I would pop on and I would do a live event. And then in the meantime, characters can kind of do their things. But it was structured and there was purpose to it. There was a plot line. People got experience every week. It's just that originally I started it because, and I wanted to do it text based because I found that it kept me in this swing of writing when I wasn't working on a project. So I could actually write out and describe full scenes and do improv, and it kept my writing skills I was churning out 2,000 to 3,000 words a day. Um, for that, and it was good practice. Like, it was good to set a scene and narrate and practice that skill set, but at the same time, to run a live event, I would log on at 6 o'clock, and next thing you know, it's 3 o'clock in the morning, and like we're halfway through the event, because you're not just waiting on me to type and set the scene. I'm waiting for somebody else to go to a Dicebot channel to roll things, and it that's where it starts to break down. I think the time commitment, while it can be more immersive to read with pictures and art, and people have better time to like think and craft their responses, if you're trying to run it like a live event, you can quickly lose your control over time.
Yeah,
Now,
that's amazing because we're doing because when you said a Discord game, I thought immediately the kind of like how we're doing our Discord game where we're on voice, once a week we go on, and we even broadcast over Twitch and stuff for our Mage the Ascension Technogate, which is a technocracy based game that we're running on Twitch right now, actually. And so immediately I thought, oh, okay, it's interesting. But then when you said that it was a 24-hour thing, it made me remember the days of the mud for the World of Darkness. Did you ever get involved in the official White Wolf mud?
Not the official White Wolf mud, but I have played muds. I did get very much into muds that were out there. There was like D&D and Strange Muds and other types. Strange Mud was my particular one. But yeah, no, we had custom programmed dice bots. We loaded people's character sheets in, and it was epic. I ran it for about 2.5 years, and then I actually did. I refused to let a game end without bringing a story to a close. So we actually did run like the finale. We actually gave everybody a conclusion, but I had to take it down. I was like, guys, we have to run an end because I have this the Storyteller's Forge. I'm working on my sequel. I have Aura, which is coming to a close. I've already geared up on my next project, which is working with XYZ Game Labs. This project called Hindsight. It's like 1,000 ways to end the world, and I was still blogging for Geek and Sundry at the time. They've kind of slowed down a lot on their blogging, but then I was starting to blog more for a few other sites like Nerdarchy, and do some writing over there. But I just had too much going on, and I absolutely did get to the start where I was like, okay, I'm starting to get burnt out. I have to start dialing back because I still have my day job. I still got a kid, and League of Legends, I really loved it right out the window. Like, just couldn't play it anymore. Most of my video games, the only video game that I was able to play in the year of 2020 is I sat down to play the Final Fantasy VII remake because I am one of those fanboys that definitely grew up with that, and I couldn't let that pass me by. But that's how busy I got, and that's some of the other stuff I've been doing in the industry. I have a lot of stuff upcoming in the future. I'm really glad that I finished Dystopia, and I cannot wait for the actual publish to come out there because I know it's so much better than my first book. Especially if you guys like technocracy type stuff, you'll love it. And the artwork for it that I got was great, and then the Red Opera is playing well, looking fantastic. We're set to go for it. But now I have the things I got to start working on next because the written word usually takes about 1.5 to 2 years before anybody actually starts to see anything. I think the most fun project I did that was short this year, though, was Bill Bowden he's a freelancer that works with Onyx Path, and Crystal Mauser. She's another great writer in a lot of spaces, like the lead designer of the PIP system. We got together and we wrote an anthology in Werewolf the Wild West about like a bunch of stories, fiction stories in Werewolf the Wild West. And we put it up on there. I wrote this short story about like a naga, and that was just a lot of fun. It was, short, 7,000 words, but I had a blast doing it.
short. I've tried my hand at a few short stories, and I wouldn't call 5,000 to 7,000 words short. I just want to go back a little bit, and this might seem like a little bit of a weird question, but when you were talking about the Discord game where it was text-based, and it sounds like you were putting a lot of time into it, and you put the word practice onto it, and
Yes.
I've always felt like, because Josh and I were talking about this earlier, there's kind of this new ecosystem in the gaming world of people trying to become gaming celebrities and such like that. And
Yes.
so when you introduce that element of the so-called hustle sometimes doing things that you might have done with friends for enjoyment in the past, you know, the enjoyment is the final end. We are now introducing things into our activities that are now a means to another end. Do you see any of the stuff that you're working on right now as like that? Like, for instance, that Discord game where you're doing something that you wouldn't necessarily do for fun because it's a means to another end in the future for your career.
So actually, it kind of goes the opposite way for me. I started writing um, because I really liked storytelling, and I went to school for art and painting once long ago before I became an electrician, and we were running all these LARPs out here, these like big like multi-world of darkness LARPs and things like that, and we got done. The game had come to an end, but we were always still telling stories, and we were sitting around at bars, reminiscing about it and talking about this space because we had like 600 players in Chicago that played in this LARP game that I'd ran for a few years, and a lot of my very close friends, we all grew really attached to all the stories. And when that had kind of come to an end, and I needed to do something, I started writing. I just took up NaNoWriMo, and I was like, all right, I'm just going to start writing. And I fell in love with it, right? And so I had done that, and then to keep writing, I had to start doing like I started writing more game fictions, and I started, and when I was running games, people started getting more letters for their characters, and they started getting more things. And I realized if I take these and I like look at them, and I compile them, I have stuff that I can work with, and I can take this and springboard and go do other ideas. So doing the practice for me wasn't so much for the hustle of like I was a I was doing the game and being a storyteller. Writing just became naturally. I do know what you mean though for the hustle to get to an end, and I do that, but that is always when if I'm ever running like a live game on stream or like something like that, if I'm just playing for friends, I don't need to broadcast that out to the world. It's a private game that I'm going to play around. But if I'm doing something that's promotional material or it's something for fun, like you can go on YouTube and you can find me running Killing Time with Gehenna Gaming, or you can find me running the Red Opera, and I like it. I do it. I wrote it. It's fun. I like being a storyteller. But if I'm on stream and everybody else is on stream, everybody there is aware that this is part of a endeavor to put something out onto that social media space, because I'm terrible at social media. I never update mine like my Twitter and like all of that stuff. I just, with all the stuff I have, I just don't have the time to like then be like, all right, now I'm going to be super active over here in these spaces. So sometimes I do have to like make room for content that I'm specifically going to put on the internet, and be a part of.
Yeah. No, in the past few months, Josh and I have had a lot of conversations about what we call entertainment products, where it's, we have this kind of philosophical debate. Well, maybe not debate, more of a conversation about it's like we're putting out this game, like he was talking about earlier, we're doing this technocracy game, and it's an entertainment product. But at the same time, we're having a good time. We're scratching all the itches of gaming. But we're just kind of like we're moving it a little bit to the side where there's a little more effort in certain areas. And yeah, sometimes I'm a little bit uncomfortable with it, but at the same time I'm like, I really, in 5 years, I want to be a guy who just does this for a job and I can get to have fun all the time. I just have to become comfortable with, putting on a face sometimes, uh, you know, doing a few things that I don't like so I can do more of what I do like. Does
So
that,
what? Yeah, no,
that's close
and
to what
what
you
I
think?
yeah, and what I've noticed is like I, for one, like I don't think I'm ever going to quit my day job. Being an electrician in Chicago provides me with so many horror stories that it fuels my endless imagination for urban fantasy. But when you are doing something like let's say you're on you're playing a game and you're streaming it, right? That part is the fun part. That's the easy part. For the storyteller, there's a lot of work. There's prep work and whatnot. But showing up to play a character and roll a dice on stream and being theatric and remembering don't drink and don't eat food because nobody wants to see or hear everybody like munch on stuff. But um, you know, when you're playing a game and you're doing that, that's the easy part. When it becomes work and you know you've moved that into a hustle, I find is when you start doing production and you start making sure that people's dice rolls are limited. You start tossing rules out the window, or even editing out segments in post production that just say like, yeah, this is just the boring part. We're gonna cut this out because it's not entertaining to watch. And then you start doing all right, now let's build a social media empire. We got somebody who's going to do GIFs and screenshots and start running a weekly Twitter things and then reaching out for other podcasts and doing blogs and getting promotional materials and creating artwork. That's where all the work comes in. And when you find yourself doing that, and it can be a passion of love, like, right, you can be like, oh, I'm really excited to get this out here. I really want to show people this stuff. But when you're putting that effort in is when you know you've crossed into that, like, this is no longer a thing that I'm necessarily doing with my friends. I got to do an interview with these guys who run a game called Encounter Party. And they had a really interesting take on the way they do their production of their stream. And if you've ever got a chance to listen to Encounter Party, you can find them on Spotify or anything like that. And they're basically they're set in Ravnica for 5e and they've got a new homeworld coming up. But they do 30 minutes, 40-minute podcast episodes that's full gameplay, all story, all role play, no mechanics. But the way that they shoot this is Brian invites everybody over to his house or they get together and they have all like their speakers and their mics and their boom mics and everything set up at the table. And they actually play like real people as friends at the table for an entire weekend straight. And they just marathon through an entire campaign and they have a blast doing it. But they'll stay in character, they'll do their stuff, but they'll actually play as friends and pretend that all of the dressings aren't there. And then they will take about 3 months and they will cater and edit, splice and cut and like re-record and sometimes add in some additional audio to actually make a full 10 episode podcast of this is entertainment, and it works for them because a lot of the people on their show are comedians and stuff like that and stage drama people that they know how to act and they already have that gift of the gift of gab, as it were. But the end result is professional quality grade entertainment, good gaming product that you would actually want to listen to on a car ride, and it's not some 4-hour podcast that you have to sit on down and watch and stream. And I remember that was the biggest thing for some of us when we were working in Geek and Sundry, or we're some like Critical Role fans and they love it. And like, Rick, have you seen the latest episode? I'm like, no, I'm like 2 seasons behind. Like, that's, that show's long, man. like I got a lot of writing to catch up on. But I thought that was probably one of the coolest hybrid models I'd ever heard of somebody described that's both doing the hustle and they also still want to capture that moment of we're doing this for fun. And so they were like, you know what, we're just not going to do it live because the moment you're doing it live, you have that on pressure.
Yeah, it's kind of we get to have fun for a weekend and you don't have to be on all the time because it's going to be heavily edited.
Right.
Yeah, I can definitely say that it's an interesting thing with I don't know if I would want to do it for like extended periods of time, but I do like the on aspect of gaming with the 4 hour games that we've been running um, over Twitch because it's when you're on you're like okay let's play now, let's actually do this. And because there's a lot of games that I've been to throughout my life in gaming groups that have been part of that game night is 50% generously gaming, with 50% of it being whatever else is kind of going on, and we kind of It's much more of a laid back, and you kind of get the gaming gets a lot more interruptions than I feel like breaks when it's just extremely casual. And I really like the aspect of when you're doing it live and you're actually broadcasting it. And, you're recording. You're gonna keep this for the archives times that type of thing, and you're making something. It's very similar to the experience I had when I went to Gen Con and I started GMing at Gen Con, which um, you know was a very stark difference because at Gen Con you're on, very similar to when
Oh
you're
yeah.
playing in the games. You're going to be playing as hard as you can. Everybody's there to play. You do your jokes and you have your fun, and you maybe like 20% of the game is kind of, you know, for breaks basically of the game experience. But it's something that I could see though the aspect though of going through. We're getting to the point where going back and editing and making sure everything is watchable on YouTube, as a historical archive, is something that I like the idea of having the fresh copy out there, just because sometimes people like watching all of that crazy stuff. Um, but
So it's kind of funny is like I think that the market for that is so saturated. I think that if you want to stand out at this point and you are like let's say you're like, hey, I want to hop in and get into streams and games and whatnot, you either have to have people that already have a crowd and already have influencers on the show, or you have to like have that like calendar, right? So you either have somebody who can already give you a jump start, or B, you have to have just a huge library of back content, right?
mhm.
And like a good hook to it as well. And because I mean, it's like, how many times do you hear somebody that's like, hey, we're streaming D&D on Twitch, right? There's a ton of games out there that are now doing that, and are is this one offering something that is worth watching? Now I'm a bit more jaded, I think, because like I probably do a lot of writing, and I'm there, and I have um, some opinions about like what I think is watchable, sort of stream and live play and acceptable. And then sometimes I can watch streams go completely off the rails, and that's also good to watch too, because I can be like, yeah, don't do this, guys. But I think live is good because it captures something raw. I just wish that live didn't mean that we were all facing cameras through little windows in a room with headsets on. And I wish that more live streams were able to capture that feel of what it's like to run at a table, right? People told me like I like the way I run my house games is very different because I run a lot of Wraith. So it's like we get together, we'll have dinner, we'll be quiet, we'll sit down, the lights go dim, we light candles, and like the music kicks up, and like I have like the TV with like the different like images and stuff, and everybody stays in character for the night. Like we don't have those like in a controlled environment. I can bring immersion, I can set a scene both with smell, with sound, with taste, and I can bring those aspects to life. I can make my characters tense and my players tense by putting a Jenga tower in, even if they're playing White Wolf, and now I'm integrating Dread into the mix. um, you can do those things at a table, and I wish that it was more capable to have like a studio set up to stream live games from that kind of atmosphere. Um, and I think that that would bring a better, more cohesive there, because I mean the players can also read more of each other's body language. How are you sitting? How engaged are you? Storytellers, you've run a ton of games yourselves, and when you're at Gen Con and you have a group full of strangers and you sit on down and you're like, okay, I'm here for your 2 hour shot of Shadowrun. Let's go steal a pineapple from a CEO or whatever. The only way you can tell if the people are having fun is by their body language and the way that they're engaging. And even over a camera, um, it's hard to pick that up, because if somebody gets frustrated, they can just take off their headset and like walk off screen. Or you're just sometimes you miss those little micro things, and I think that those are important. So I don't know. I think I'm kind of jaded by the saturation of streams. If you don't have a really good hook, to your game, and there isn't some editing, even just an edited intro of like, you know, here's 15 seconds of what our podcast is about and or what our episode is about and why you should be listening and watching. 4 hours is a big time commitment to ask of somebody else to take a dive into your stream, especially in an episodical thing. I mean, hell, I only give Netflix 8-9 hours, and that's for a bingeable season that I'm looking for.
So that's actually brings up something that we jumped into thinking about. That was one of the things that we wanted to do, which we're failing a little bit right now on, but and I'm trying to get you guys back on track. We'll see. Um, but we're trying to do episodic first of all. Trying to do the concept that you don't really need to watch all of our streams at all. Like some of the episodes might be an arc episode, but even if it's an arc episode, you should be able to watch it and get all of the elements of what you need to get from a show without, basically going back to the old time system, not doing the whole epic arc that everybody has moved towards, which I love for Netflix and binging and stuff like that. But like you said, I can't ask people to commit hundreds of hours to watch all of these episodes that we're creating as we start creating them and stuff like that. The idea is can I get you to watch 4 hours or even 2 hours of something to really, and that definitely, though, I see what you're saying though on
That does change the dynamic, though. Like it's a lot easier to get me to say, or get anybody to say, hey, we have this special one shot, this horror game on this night. Come watch some shenanigans, or here's this one shot episode that we're going to try these things out. Yes, that works, right? Like that is different. And if you do have a 3 episode arc, right? That makes it pretty easy. Oh, I popped in the middle and let me just go watch and ×2 speed YouTube, watch the the past one to catch up to the bit I want to see. Uh, What's interesting on like from a blogger standpoint is because one of the things I used to have to do was I used to have to take Ellie by Night and recap what happened for Geek and Sundry. Like, so Jason Carl and the family and all of them would have their episode, and then I would have to watch the episode and then write a blog post that was to recap what was going on. And because you needed, if somebody missed something, if they missed an episode, the Geek and Sundry done the analytics, they found out that if somebody missed 2 episodes of a show, and it was a serial run show, there was like that was it. There was a lost viewer. They were just gone to the wind.
Mm-hmm.
But if you provided them with a blog post that said, here's a recap that you could read in 5 minutes about where the story is at. Oh, hey, I'm free tonight. I got nothing going on. Cool. Where are we at? All right, great. Here we go. And so that was also another way to get people back in. And I know that they do the recap, like right before your episode, you'll pop in and it'll be like, here's where we're at in the story, right? Here's what happened last time, or here's the hook for this episode. But people won't even go to click on that if they are already off put by the by that barrier of entry with that like time sink that's there. But if they had like a blog post that loaded them up ahead of time, and that was a quick 5-minute commitment, it was clear, here's a 5-minute commitment, here's a 4-hour commit, I like what I see, then I'm going to go over here.
Yeah, no, it's really interesting. Like, one of the big things is that I also got from you was the going back and editing, and I'm getting to that point right now where I have a bunch of live footage, and the thing about it is to go back and create something from a bunch of, because there's 90% of it is, I mean, literally unwatchable, like, for me.
But at the same time, you get to have one fun bit when you go back and edit, right? The
Right.
creation of GIFs. Dude, players do. When you go back through and you edit footage of people on stream, you can find some of the most hilarious cuts of your friends, and you can use that. Oh, yes, you can.
One of the questions that we did have from one of our people that's watching right now is that they weren't really familiar with Critical Role and what they're getting. They're kind of curious about it. I was just wondering what your kind of intake or input into what Critical Role is.
Oh, what Critical Role is? It's Jesus, it's the reason D&D and gaming largely had a massive revolution in the past decade. Basically, they took Matt Mercer and a crap ton of incredibly talented voice actors. They threw them into a basement and they started actually streaming their games. And they were fucking awesome. Is what it came down to. And then the show, as they kept growing and they added more and more people and actors and more production value to it, it was kind of neat to watch a show go from being just a D&D game in a basement with a bunch of voice actors to an actual produced, like episodic thing with massive story arcs and things like that. And then they sold it to Amazon Prime. If you haven't gotten into it, wait until the anime comes out because that shit raised like $12 million on Kickstarter and it is looking fantastic.
Okay, I have not
The
heard about that.
Yeah, the Critical Role anime is coming. I think it's actually coming out like next year. And they actually took the full D&D game and they made a full anime. The animation looks beautiful. And I mean, how many of us have ever had the dream of taking your game and like imagining it as
Yeah.
like an anime cutscene or as like an animated like, yeah, I know I have like 100%. They got it and their fandom, they raised like 12 million bucks. And so they're like, first we're just gonna do like one episode. Like, okay, no, now you guys are getting an entire season. And then like Amazon was like, all right, no, we're just gonna we're gonna help you out with this. We're gonna have many more seasons. And but they did it. I mean, that is the dream. I mean, Matt Mercer, went from, he actually came to Midwinter, back in the day and was, playing, he's been out there and does his voice acting and whatnot. And
He's actually been to Madison a bunch of times for Gamehole Con, which is our local convention.
Gamehole Con's a great con. But it's that was a game that started and then there was another one with Dan Harmon Quest. I think for the most part, all streams that have kind of come are kind of trying to chase sort of what those two have done. And they've talked about it. Some people who get into gaming think that all games should be like Critical Role's table or Harmon Quest table because that's their introduction into gaming. But not all storytellers are Matt Mercer. Everybody is their own unique storyteller at their own table. Their friends are their own friends, and every game is going to play differently and feel differently. And so you shouldn't be trying to replicate or chase that. Do you and play in your own way. Especially important to say that because now it's like you have to understand like that show is it's professional, and so it's just awesome entertainment with really good writing behind it. So I don't know, I like it, but I remember like the fandom when like spoilers happened and characters died and people freaking out and stuff like that. It was great. But anyway,
do you
I guess
watch
that's my
do you watch Critical Role right now?
Me? No, I don't watch the new stuff that's coming out. Mostly because I know that they're coming out in animated format, and I am a late content binger, so I will wait for a season to get done, and then I will go through and I will binge the content. If I am doing something with work right now, like let's say it was something with Geek and Sundry, sometimes I would have to cover something or do something. Yes, then at that point I would like be watching that in the background to catch up with what I have to write. But there's simply too much out there to, that would either be my job to watch all of that and then go write about it, or my option is to wait for the animated show to catch the newer seasons when they come out with those. And that's what I want to do anyway.
Yeah.
But I do catch their.
Go ahead.
Oh, I was gonna say I do catch anytime they're at a convention and they do a live show. Like I always show up for that because
Yeah.
it's like if you're going to, you're at Gen Con, and when Critical Role puts on a live table play at Gen Con, it's freaking awesome. It's like going to like a good panel show.
Yeah, actually, our Gen Con friend from back in Marshfield, where Josh is from, he went in actually 2019 and 2018, didn't he, Jason?
I think so.
Yeah, and at the time I hadn't been watching it, but a friend of mine, one of the players on the Technogate game, has been into it for quite a long time, and I was like, I'm going to get into this. I'm single, I own a house, I have a job, I can afford to take a lot of time to watch this stuff, and so I'm about 40 episodes into season campaign 2, and it's just it is really well done. I do worry, like you said, that it's the thing that everybody chases, and sometimes I worry about the negative aspects of that. It's kind of like everybody's trying to be the next Critical Role, and sometimes I worry about that being a thing.
It's truthfully actually like
There's
you've pushed me a lot to want to watch Critical Role, and I've watched a little bit here and there, but I'm afraid to like delve really deep into it to be like, okay, I want to do exactly what these guys do. I kind of get my mindset proper to not
so when you
do that chase.
I mean, but it goes to any kind of content creation. As a writer, I have to read other urban fantasies. I have to know what other people in my genre are writing, so I can say like, "Hey, that guy did something really fucking awesome. Go you, man!" Or that girl is a badass. I need to take tips on dialogue from her. Like you need to be aware of the people in your space that are also working in your space, but at the same time, you also have to make sure that what you're doing is not just trying to chase and ride those coattails, but offering your own unique angle. And one of the things that you guys have going for you is you are running World of Darkness, and you are doing different games that aren't even D&D, but the prospect of acting and playing and being around on stream, that's still something to learn. Like, hey, here's how they do it. Here's what they're doing well. Encounter Party does it one way. Harmon Quest does it another. Magic Quest, is out there doing it. There's this great podcast by Let's Be Legendary. Let's Be Legendary. It's a bunch of women in D&D Wild West, and they're actually from I think they're actually from up there in Milwaukee, in Madison area, and they do an audio, and they have like artwork that they do and draw to stand out, and their artwork is kind of fun. So everybody needs to still be aware of it. So you still got to watch even just an episode or two, just to catch in with, like, even if you want to like really see how the show grew, is also a great thing. Go watch episode 1, go watch episode 10, and then go to like the 3rd season and like watch the finale, or something like that, just to see how the crew and the intros and everything changed as they progressed as a show. Check out their websites, things like that. There's a whole team behind them that makes that engine go. But it did just start off with them rolling dice in front of a camera, so it's a good industry case study, right? I think at some point they're guaranteed to come out with a documentary about them, like I do not see that happening. But it's worth always checking out what other people in your space are doing, because everybody has this impression that everybody is a competitor. They're not. We're all content creators, and in content creation, we're all in the same bucket. There's enough room to go around because content is consumable. So like, oh, you like the shit that these guys are doing? Check out this guy's stuff, because when you're done with that, you're going to need something else to do, right?
Yeah, it tastes similar, so here, try a bite of this.
Yeah.
Right.
One of the best piece of advice that I ever got at a panel of writers at Gen Con, like how do I do stuff on Twitter? And one of the authors was like, promote other writers. That's what you do. If you
Yep.
want to get your voice out there, promote all the other people. Just do nothing but sing their praises. We're talking about Critical Role and the commodification essentially of gaming as a entertainment product. And this is a question that I've had that you might be uniquely able to answer. Is there a way in the future to do what Critical Role did for tabletop gaming, but for LARPing? Is there a way to make LARPing into an entertainment product?
Yes. And I
Has somebody
would
done it?
not in okay, so not in America. In Poland, though, and in Germany and whatnot, LARPing is in a whole different uh, scale than it is here. The Nordic LARPs and the full immersion LARPs take things to a completely different level. And we've gotten some things over here. We have like the Wizardry College, and we have Dragon Thrones, which I briefly mentioned before. And these as an entertainment product. Epic Games is a company that puts on this LARP twice a year called Dragon Thrones, and also a few other ones like a Cyberpunk one and things like this. And what they'll do is they'll say it costs like $1,000 and they rent out a freaking castle and you fly out to Pennsylvania for the weekend and you get all your drinks, your food, your, bed, lodge, everything in a full immersive experience for an entire weekend. And it is a for-profit company, right? That is their job. Their job is to produce and make content. They're actually coming out with like the Dragon Thrones as like an RPG system and a book for people to play at home because it has grown to that point. But as a full immersion LARP, I went there one weekend and I took ballroom dancing lessons. I did mead tastings. I saw a medieval fight tournament. I got to play crazy epic politics in LARP format. I got to watch a magic show, listen to bards sing, got really immersed into the storyline, and had a blast. And I totaled it all up. If I went to medieval times, went for ballroom dancing, did all this stuff, I came out way ahead. Um, but it was immersive, it was fun, and they provided an extravagant experience for that price ticket that I was paying. And not to like sing their praises to the enemy, there was downsides, right? Like downsides where it was hot as hell because it was in July and we're outside trying to be in costume. And I was like, okay, maybe we shouldn't do it here at this time of the year. But you had 100, 200 players showing up. And if you think about the price per tickets and the fact that they have a company around it, and you see them do their load in, their load out, the guys at Epic Game, they have like safety managers and people making sure that everybody's got enough water bottles and logistics managers and things like that. Like they are an event company at that point where you are putting on a production for players, which they are paying for. And the Wizardry College of LARPs is the same thing. There's a kids camp if you have kids that you can send your kid to like a 2-week summer camp where they learn like LARPing, acting, theater, drama, but they're also like immersion in like a wizardry school. And they have like a bunch of educators that run this show. And then in Europe, um, there was indeed a LARP based TV show for one of their LARPs. And like, this is the kind of LARPs where people's costumes are just right out of like San Diego Comic Con. Everybody is full. Like, if they're an orc, everybody is like meticulously, perfectly crafted orc. And like like their outfits were intense, and the battles they had were, 2,000 people on this side and 2,000 people on this side, clashing in the middle of like this big epic Germanic forest with a castle in the background. So, they did a season of it. They didn't do another one. I know that. But it is out there. You can watch it. If I don't think it's ever been translated. And I think maybe when they tried it, it was before the marketplace or before that idea. was really there. If they had maybe come out with something like that this year, I mean, they couldn't do it this year because of LARP and COVID, but if they had come out with it, a little closer to now, I think that it probably would have gotten better traction than it did. But immersion LARPing and Nordic LARPing is an entertainment product by a for-profit enterprise um, that offers something to a fandom that can go and afford and have that experience, which caters basically to gamers who have gotten older. They've had their families, they finally got their jobs, they're able to go do that, or we just want to escape for a weekend. And I could go sit in the hot sun and burn underneath the day star, or I can go play games for a weekend and get like ballroom dancing and watch swordsmen fight like for like my guild's honor. That's pretty cool.
Well, I mean, that sounds amazing. I hope there are more companies like that in the future. And yeah, the last thing that you talked about, and I obviously don't know how they filmed it or what it looked like, but that's kind of what I was getting towards is we've now taken tabletop to an entertainment product where it's just essentially putting cameras in front of players, uh, like Critical Role. And I've just always had this idea of what if somebody finally gets the right people, the right storytellers, the right players, the right tech people, and puts them all together and says, like, run us a vampire LARP for a year, and we're just going to
I mean,
videotape everything.
we do know one that did go through and it was incredibly successful. And it is one of the best LARPs I've ever seen. What We Do in the Shadows was fantastic.
Yes.
Yeah.
What We Do in the Shadows that is a really good.
Come on, it's every vampire LARP ever. Oh my god, it's like, hey, we're going to go into this like, bar, and it's like totally divey inside, and like they're acting like they're big print. I mean, if you're a White Wolf nerd, the places that we think we are important is the prince with the jeans that don't match the shoes. We've all been to those LARPs, and come on, you gotta have some fun turned in on yourself with that. What We Do in the Shadows, I think, nailed it. If you do that, yeah, I mean, but I mean, I think you can do it. Um, I think that some companies that have experienced with immersion LARPs are probably very close. It requires a lot of set dressing. We did one with the Seventh Age where we had like VR headsets and like escape rooms and this one night of gambling here in Chicago where we completely overhauled into theater set dressing. That would have been a cool one night, stream, right? We can only run the event for one night, but if you had enough camera crews and you had enough people and then you edited it to make sure that the story all flowed, because you're going to have to film with a LARP a bunch of different people. You couldn't do it live because you're going to film 100 different people all at different times, and then you're going to sit there and editing and capture all the best moments.
The best you could do for live
Which
is probably like put it on one person, and you just have that one person going around, and you get to see just from that one vantage point. But then be like the next time, when you see the actual movie, you get to see everything that happened. I could see that would be
yeah,
the
but
only way I could see that.
and at the same time, for some LARPs, I could probably say that might be engaging, but there's also like you don't want to put the camera on the storyteller, right? Because all you're going to do is get 50 million questions about ask me about my character or how do I do this. And then so the storyteller, who arguably should have the camera for some of it, should never have the camera. And then whichever player gets it, by virtue of that one player having the camera, is now going to change the dynamic of the entire game. Some people won't go near them. Some people won't talk to them. Like first off, the entire game has to be in on it. But if you only had it from a single point of view, you would actually lose that very essence of what a LARP could capture.
Well, right. Well, I would think you do both in conjunction, and you do it with like the prince, somebody that is always role playing, shouldn't be answering stupid
Well, no, no.
questions.
Oh no, what you could do is you could totally do it from like an in-character perspective, though. You could have the documentary crew go into the LARP with a character who's like a Toreador or somebody there that's actually doing interviews with other characters. Or like if you were doing this as a technocracy like LARP, it would be like a New World Order agent investigator who's viewing breaches for the Amalgam and how people are stepping out of line and like inquisiting people about their characters and actions they've done. And as long as you loaded that player up with a shit ton of information about what everybody else's dirty secrets were, you could make an engaging one night shot, I think. That
That
actually sounds fun.
that's interesting. Hmm. Yeah, we've been discussing little ways of doing because we want to do some one-shot like LARPs that are just, kind of very deep, political, high intrigue, got a lot of, background. It's just a one-shot, but also then having like a Mike was talking about possibly having like instead of cameraing everybody for the first kind of shot of doing this, it would be doing like a room that you have that this is the recording room where you record some really important scenes or something like that just to see what people are interested in. But I really like the idea of having a documentary like crew that kind of goes through and it's just kind of you do the Dunder Mifflin or the Office and or any of those
Yeah.
kind of documentary type, spoof where it's all fictional, but it's a documentary on the fictional thing.
Could you imagine the prince, like who like would like refuse to acknowledge this, like especially if you're running V5 and he's like, "You're all part of the Second Inquisition. Everybody here is going to die now. Thank you." But just like listens and finds out what his sheriff said about him in the bathroom on the camera. Like, you could have some funny moments. I would say that if you are going to do something like that, though, do a different mechanic resolution system than rock paper scissors. Um, Dice play well with cameras on screen, especially because oftentimes you can roll the dice on the screens. But rock, paper, scissors and doing retests and repeats into this just would look really weird on camera. And I know it's part of LARP. I would default back to the Requiem system of pulling cards and doing the swap because it's flash
I like
on
that.
film and it looks cooler.
Interesting. I haven't looked into the Requiem system at all for LARP. That's interesting. They have a card-based system. I like that actually.
Yeah, it's you get your attribute, you just add. It's kind of very similar to the L5R live action system. You pull a card, you add your stat to it, and whoever got the higher wins. It's quick and simple.
Yeah, yeah, easy, quick resolution is really what you're looking for in that situation. Interesting.
Right.
Yeah.
Also, it's flashy, and since everybody has different cards, um, you could have like cool custom card backs and decks and things like that, and those will pop well and do something good on videos. I mean, at the end of the day, if you're trying to put a production together, little details are going to what matter, right? Um, it's the small details. Is this story engaging? Because nothing you do, even like the reason I'm a writer and I write content like the Red Opera, right? I didn't want to write something that I didn't want to write a game system. Game systems are hollow. Those are what people play and that's what people do. But you see all these streamers, they're running Descent to Avernus. They're running, Heist at Waterdeep, or they're running these scenarios that are already out there and they're usually content and books that people had bought. I want to be squarely in content generation, making sure that a story is epic and awesome and good. Other people will take that and then go stream it and run it and play it, and they'll act it out and they'll do that bit. But I focus very clearly on, is this a good story? So instantly, I'm going to be like, is your hook strong enough to get me to watch this? And if your pitch doesn't sell me in 15 words, I'm sorry, there's just a lot of competition. It's not that your stuff is bad. It's just that you do have to work on that copy. And so when you're like gonna do a live action stream, it could be really cool. I'm definitely interested because like I am a LARPer. I have my old character sheet in my coat pocket still from my 8th gen Brujas. So like like that is not going anywhere out of me anytime soon. But I can fully admit, because I've run plenty of games, here are moments that are exciting in LARP. And here's moments where it's just three guys outside smoking and like, one girl showing up complaining about like, somebody stealing her parking spot, like there are parts that are good. There's parts that aren't, because you can't control 50, 60, 70, 80, 100, 200 people. That's a lot of organic. And so that means you have to capture that.
Hmm.
So that means you have to worry about the things you can control. Costumes mandatory, your set dressings, your system resolution, and the storyline that you craft ahead of time. Because everything else is actor improv. And that's the nature of LARP anyway. Who the heck knows if they're actually going to follow the storyline? They probably won't. Like they'll probably just like get involved in their own politics because somebody said one thing status wide and now somebody's getting blood hunted. Like, um,
Right. The whole
and then
story
your
has
game's off the
changed.
rails. But,
Woohoo! Like, yeah. But yeah,
right. So
but I think that's one of the interesting aspects. I was talking to some people about how reality can get way more weird than any TV show. Like The West Wing would not be able to do if they made a show that was very similar to what reality is in the last 4 years. Like that show would by most producers and writers and actors and stuff would be like, no, I'm not doing any of this. Like this none of this makes sense. And the interesting thing is that stories need to make sense. Reality doesn't. And I like the aspect of role playing that kind of muddles that ground where it's like I have as a GM this idea of what the story is and what's going on, and I have control over a lot of stuff since I have control over the world to a certain degree. But one single player action can completely and utterly change everything in that world, and it becomes an instance where I had scripted out everything to do this, but now somebody did this and everything has changed and the whole game
yeah,
is different now. We're all focused on something completely different, but it adds that element of unpredictability, and it doesn't need to make sense sometimes. Like sometimes the princess gets pissed off at somebody and it's like, I want his head on a stick and we're going to spend all night hunting this guy down and he's going to spend all night stopping us. Like
one of my biggest tips for storytellers on how to make encounters dynamic is I tell them write out your scripted encounter, then make your guards unprepared when the players walk into it, and the guy's like in the middle of eating a chicken leg. Like if you script out things, like I can go all down a huge rant about storytelling, but like scripting out an entire encounter is already setting yourself up for failure because in a tabletop game, it is inherently a shared storytelling experience. You're creating a sandbox, an onion of awesomeness for these people to start peeling back layers and getting consequences, good or bad, for whatever action they take. But you ultimately have it's like a world with a core, and your through thread, but following a direct narrative linear track. I know that in some games that is more akin and more natural, like Dungeons and Dragons and Shadowrun, are actually two game systems that arguably adhere closer to narrative track linear games. Shadowrun, most people don't even think about it being a linear game, but it at its core it really is. You get your mission from your Johnson, you go to do your task, you get to determine how you're going to do that task, you get paid at the end, you know. And so it's
yep.
got its beat. L5R, by contrast, is the exact opposite of that. Here is this world of Rokugan, this sandbox of, a conglomeration of cultures all thrown in. What are you going to do? And so having those muddled moments, I think, is a lot of fun. And I guess I kind of, I agree with you. I just laughed at when you're like, I scripted everything out and the players wrote it. And I'm like, yes, all storytellers do this at one point. We script things out and then players do that again. And we never do that again.
So
That is the end of the scripting.
So I find it really interesting. What I've learned how to do as a GM is I still write out the whole concept of everything the way that I want it to go, and then I know the moment that I step into it that it's not gonna that none of that preparation, all of that did was just get the gears running as to like the potential of what could be, to knowing that that is absolutely not going to be what the end result is. And I have to say that Gen Con was the first time that like, because most of the time I'm a really on the feet GM, and Mike can attest to this. Anybody who watches Technogate can probably attest to this. Is that I I'm making things up as I go a lot. I'm understanding the game. I'm listening to my players, deciding on what's going on in the universe based upon how they're talking about stuff sometimes. I'm not afraid to add things in willy-nilly into my stuff just because I've known that it's much better to be an on your feet and changing up the world as you're going, rather than being like, this is the set in stone things that I have. This is how things are, and even if I'm wrong, I'm gonna hold that to being right. I'm gonna change. I feel like I'm one of those evolving GMs where it's like it's always about changing the world to kind of fit the scenario that we're in. Sometimes I'm like, I know you do a lot of this too, and you do it at a much better way and I'm hoping to aspire to continue to evolve towards that way, but of bringing in different game elements into the game, like bringing Jenga games in and doing different kind of things in order to kind of change up actually what's going on, the different game elements that you use. But I do a lot of like, I'll throw rules out the window, or I'll just quickly make up rules
Oh,
on
you
the
need to,
spot,
right?
because who
Uh,
cares? I'm not here for the rules. I'm
You're
here
also not
for.
there to hurt your yeah, you're not there to hurt the players. You're going to do what makes sense in the scene to control a tension meter is ultimately what we're doing. You're reading the room, there's a tension in a scene and a setting, and you're either raising or you're lowering the tension artificially, whether through hidden dice mechanics or through the way that you speak and talk to players. My biggest tip towards like any storyteller that really wants to cross over into that schemer mindset has actually been, I've like refined this one over the years, is write your game session after your last game session. And so when you get done with game on Saturday night, write down what happened. And then on like Sunday, be like, okay, what's going to happen next week? And you just look at what happened in the last session. So all you're doing is chaining the consequences together, but you know where you're going somewhere in the world. But at this point now, you're always going to be pivoting immediately off the player's actions. And then that's where I get all the cool ideas of like, crap, I'm going to use a Jenga tower, or I'm going to have the pizza delivery guy show up and be an NPC next week. Yeah, like I will get weird ideas planning on what we're going to do after the next game session. And so if I do all of my writing immediately after the players have taken their actions, I will always have the freshest source of input on where the story's going next.
Interesting. Yeah, that's something I've because I always do it, a little bit before the game actually. I'm really bad about I'll think about it, think about it, think about it right just before the game type stuff. But that's a brilliant idea of, and I don't know why I never even thought about doing this, but that's brilliant. Just go right after immediately after the game. You're already in the mindset. You already know where the game is kind of going, and you can kind of be already in that mind instead of trying to remember, along with
And
all the
then you
40
have like
million ideas you had.
right. And then you have a week of editing.
Right.
So
And then you
then
have a
you can
week of.
tweak it, right? You're thinking about it. It's not like you thought about it right before game and you're like, oh God, I wish I thought about it this way. You get to come back later on and be like, on Tuesday, you're like, it'd be really cool. I wonder if my friend can show up and play this character. He would be perfect for the scene, and then that's how you start getting into the fun ideas. And you're like, okay, this is what's going to happen next game session. How do I make that scene pop? And because you already know what's going to happen, so at that point you can start making those scenes more encounter, more dynamic. Oh, they're going to fight 4 goblins next week. Okay, great. Now they're 4 goblins on a cart with a bit of TNT headed towards their little sister, and all of a sudden now you've made that encounter better, but you've done that over the week because your party chose to fight 4 goblins.
Right.
So and that's why I think it's always better to draft your next game session immediately following. And it took me a while to figure out wait a minute, why am I always, oh yes, it's because I do it here. and my other friends are doing it here. And then I had them start doing that, and it's what I've been teaching my kids, and it's been working fantastic with that.
That's awesome. So are your kids how old are they right now?
Oh, I mean, like the D&D
Oh,
for
your
kids.
D&D kids. Okay.
Yes, I have one kid. He is 13, but the rest of the program is all over in the age ranges. So, uh,
Is your
uh,
13-year-old
some of
into gaming?
yes, yeah, that's why I started. That's actually why I started the program. I tried my hand at Adventurers League. There was another 10-year-old kid there. Adventurers League tried to incentivize DMs that you got experience for your characters if you would run games, and that did not necessarily bring out the best storytellers. It brought out the people who wanted extra experience for their characters, and he yelled at a 10-year-old kid in the middle of the table and called him an idiot. I promptly said, "Fuck you." I grabbed the kid, went over, grabbed the kid's dad, pulled out my own books, sat down, and said, "Okay, we're going to play D&D. Let's build a character from scratch." Um, and I got involved in running. My kid got involved. They brought friends, and 200 kids later were running on Zoom in the coronavirus times to give them something to do that's different from being at home or playing video games or watching Netflix and still be able to play. Um, so it's been going on for about 2.5 years. And some of them have graduated and now they start storytelling and running for their friends. So, they obviously got to the elder part of the age group. So, but it's been working really well teaching people how to become storytellers because we always need more STs. We always need that one person to pick up and start running.
Absolutely.
What's the name of that?
What was that?
What's the name of that?
That's the D&D for Kids program at Fair Games. The book that will be coming out related to that in the future will be called The Storytellers 4. My computer, it's not yet finished. Almost there.
Is it open for kids around the country at this point, or is it just local?
It's, we run on Zoom. I bet you could email the store, and I bet you could sign up no matter where you're at.
Because I have 2 nephews and 2 nieces, and 2 of them are in Chicagoland, but 2 of them are in Milwaukee. And the 2 in Milwaukee, I think, would get a lot more out of it. So I'm genuinely that's Fair Games. Is that
fair game in down? Yeah, FAIR game in Downers Grove.
And we'll
And
put
that's
a link to that definitely in the show notes and stuff like that. If you could just shoot that over to us, and any other links that you have.
Yeah, I'll give you guys the Red Opera and the Seventh Age and that one too. It's the Youth D&D program, yeah, because normally it was local because you had to show up to it, but I didn't think about it. We've been running remote since March.
Yeah, no, I think it's a really, really great idea. The way that you described it. Although I might be thinking about the description that you gave on the other podcast that I listened to earlier. So
that's my private. That is the same group, same program. But that's that Boltius story where I built them up over the year. So I have to tell the story now because you mentioned it, right? So you're gonna get a repeat. I know you've already heard it before, but
Well, yeah, Josh
so
hasn't
in
heard
this
that.
program. Josh hasn't heard it. So in this program, I have this brass dragon named Boltius, and the whole concept of the game is the kids are in a dangerous scenario, one by one with their characters, and this brass dragon comes out and plucks them from danger and saves them, and drops them off in the middle of the wilderness and says, "This is our new home now. We're building this place here." And it's kind of like Suikoden, right? The whole concept of the game is the kids go out and they build a city, right? They go out into the wilderness. They have to survive and they build a town and they go out and recruit people. Like some of their adventures are to go to like the elemental plane of fire and like recruit chefs and bring them back so that they can have food. And, what they're actually doing throughout this process is they're actually building their first campaign world. They don't know it, but they're actually building it bit by bit, adventure by adventure, with the story behind everything that they're contributing to the world. And this brass dragon Boltius is absolutely like their mentor, their leader. He bails them out of trouble. He gives them help. He's arguably your storyteller character to, this encounter has gone quickly off the rails. All right, let me have Boltius come in and help. But there is a villain. This villain, this blue dragon named Goresnouch, is plaguing the characters the entire 26 episodes of this campaign. And Goresnouch has minions and pirates and other things that he sends there. And at some point, he actually sends the kids' parents to come raid their village and try to kidnap them and bring them back home and stuff like that. So the parents will actually show up to the table and actually play, and the kids have to storytell for their parents. The raid with all their pets that they have, and so the kids have been learning to hate Goresnouch this entire time, all the way up, and they've done epic quests to get there and fight him, and finally, in the store epic, after about a year of running the game, we have these 7 tables lined up, and all the kids are part of Sleen's Cascade in their own little villages in their own way, and Goresnouch has had enough of them, and this gargantuan ancient blue dragon, with a metallic jaw, lands down in the middle of their village, just starts eradicating their homes. Boltius swoops up to start defending and attacking, and the brass dragon and the blue dragon, they absolutely are tearing into each other. The kids at all the tables have to go run around and deal with Goresnouch's generals and stop things before Boltius, goes down. But, when the time comes, I, have the room get quiet, and I rip Boltius's head off as Goresnouch tosses his body to the ground. The brass dragon's head flops around, lifeless, tongue hanging out. The brass dragon has been defeated and killed, and Goresnouch just snaps his fingers and is like, "You're next." Every kid in this store got deathly quiet. There was nothing. There were no chatter at tables. Nobody was engaged in side conversation. One of the kids just quietly pulls out his phone, sets it down, and plays Megalovania from Undertale. And it's like, "You're dead, Goresnouch." And those kids were focused, man. They took down this blue dragon with a zeal that I have never seen before. And it was great. They were absolutely engaged. I had gotten them to the point where they actually cared about the story that was happening, where that even if they were in a store environment, they didn't care about what was around them. And when Goresnouch fell, the kids, went home. Everybody was talking about, "Oh, this is what I did there in the encounter. This is the fantastic thing." And fast forward 7 hours later at night, I'm sitting at my computer doing that thing where you write the adventure that comes next, and I hear crying from my bedroom, and I'm like, "That's not good." And I go in my bedroom and I ask, I see Trent's crying, and I'm like, "Kiddo, what's wrong, man? Is everything okay?" And he refuses to tell me. He's like, "No, I don't want to tell you. I'll only text you." Like, "Okay, whatever you need." And he texts me one word, Boltius. And it hit me right there. I realized that all these kids had a year-long emotional attachment to this brass dragon, and like a horrible monster, I murdered him grisly without any semblance, even knowing that the next adventure was them going on a quest to resurrect and bring him back and use magic to get him back. I left it on that cliffhanger, and I found out that there were so many kids that were crying over this brass dragon, and God, I felt fucking horrible. So don't ever do that, by the way. Leave an Easter egg, leave a dragon's egg there that he's gonna be okay, or a clue. I mean, because what helped is I did sit with Trent and I showed him, I was like, "Hey, this is the next adventure. You guys have a scroll at your resurrection. You're gonna do this. This is what's gonna happen. This is what's coming next." And he was like, "Okay. We get a chance to do stuff." But yeah, don't be that monster if you have a bunch of kids. Leave a but it was good though, because they did also need to learn that yeah, this is a part of storytelling.
Yeah,
That tragedy stuck with them.
that's an interesting. You got to be careful what age, I think, when you introduce them to the concepts of that. But um, you know, the concept of getting hit in the heart by a story is really important for people to feel and to um, it's something that I think it doesn't happen enough to people, and I don't think
Right.
it happens
But
enough.
But imagine this. You're a parent who's paying money for their kid to play in this youth D&D program. And next thing you know, your kid is bawling their eyes out over said program. The store did not get very happy phone calls at first until they realized what was going on. And then their parents were all like us. They were like, oh my God, that sounds like such an epic story. No wonder why they're drawing artwork. And these kids are drawing like artwork and things like that of their characters and their bits. So they got attached, but the parents definitely need to be explained to. Because trust me, any parent who's signing their kid up for youth D&D generally probably is cool with the idea of gaming. And like, as long as I was able to be like, okay, wait, this is what happened. Here's where we're going. They're like, okay, cool. Don't do it again.
That's
You know?
awesome. Yeah, that's
So, but that's
you get one.
that's
You
that
only
store
get one.
program.
Everyone gets
Yeah.
one.
Um, but that's that store program. Same program. We're on different content now. There's no epic deaths planned. Instead, there's realm hopping shenanigans afoot.
Ooh,
So,
always fun.
but yeah. So that's what I got. Um,
Are we wrapping up?
Yeah, I think that we can go ahead and do a wrap up here. One last question that I kind of have for you, and also if anybody that's watching, that's on stream has any questions. But one question I just kind of have for you, just a general question, is what do you think gaming's going to be like moving forward? Do you think that there's going to be a big change that comes because of the experience we've had with the pandemic? And just kind of putting out there that I had a big change of now I'm really into doing tabletop over the internet and streaming it and having Roll20 and using that. It's just something I never
you're
was forced into until today, and I feel like I'm changed by it. I'm going to move forward with doing a lot more of online gaming through Discord and Roll20 type stuff. But I'm just wondering how you feel like gaming's gonna evolve moving forward.
AR. I am seeing a lot of stuff come down the horizon for augmented reality gaming to enhance tabletop experience. Because if you are getting, eventually, we're going to be able to play in person again and playing online using Fantasy Ground, Roll20, dynamic lighting, all of these different things, the images, the sounds, the music, to be able to have that immersive experience to create that to your computer is a thing. But people still want to play in person. Tabletop gaming's biggest draw sometimes is that, hey, we can sit around, we can meet up, we can have food, we can have drinks, we can hang out and play. But as a storyteller, it is so much easier to use digital tool sets and managements and the ability to create, enhance, and track D&D Beyond for character sheets. I think Vampire is probably going to come out with something at some point. They probably have to. But you're going to see, I think, as tablets and like you ever see those cards that already have like gifts on them, but they're real cards, and if you move them, they like
Yep.
pretend to cast Eldritch Blast and like the deck of many things and stuff. Those stuff, it's just really cool. I think you're going to see some really high end, top tier gaming products continue to hit the market that are just going to make the at table experience something like you're going to see more layers and more better stock layers, and you're going to be able to buy whatever perfect Christmas gift you want for your storyteller friends. I think it's going to be a very good time to be a storyteller, right? That's what I think. Because those who are going to choose to run and be the content drivers that have to do all the prep work, the writing work, and the organization, there's so many more tool sets that are coming out that are streamlining that process for us so that we can actually just focus on content.
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, I completely agree. I really love the concept of really augmenting our in-person tabletop
Mm-hmm.
games with electronics, and and I'm not sure I'm ever, I've I really would love to do a giant super tabletop game eventually someday again, but adding in all of the augments of technology into it and recording it would be something that I really look forward to in the future. So um, and present as I continue to work towards it. Well, as long as we get to see people in person again, that would be great. So
We will. Science is wonderful. So just a matter of time.
it's magic.
No, man, the technocracy just saved our asses. That's
Right.
what's happening.
Awesome. Well,
Like,
this
screw paradox. Here's a vaccine.
so real quick, I'm just gonna go through just a couple shout outs here, and then if you have any shout outs that you want to give as well, go ahead. But just a quick shout out to Midnight Express, who kind of got us into um, podcast, or got me into podcasting for World of Darkness after kind of watching his shows. I really enjoyed watching that. It really got me out there into this. Utility Muffin Labs does some really good podcasting, as well as Dark Days Radios. Um, check out Onyx Path. They got a lot of really good games that are coming out right now. White Wolf has been revised. They're out and about again. Check out DriveThruRPG in order to get to your books. Really nice on demand print
I've got
stuff that they do. So.
I've got Wraith 20 is on the way.
That's my boy right there, Wraith 20.
And especially thank you so much, Rick. We'll definitely throw up a bunch of links for the stuff that you're doing. It's been awesome.
Awesome.
Yeah. Anybody you have a shout out that you'd like to give to?
Yeah. I mean, check out Apotheos Studios and the work that they're doing. I mean, obviously they're ones that are publishing the Red Opera, but the artwork that they're doing is fantastic, and they got some other things. I'd like to give a special shout out to Patrick Edwards, who is one of the co-authors of the Red Opera, and he writes drunken, sarcastic comedy, a book called Space Tripping, and a fellow novelist, but he's over at Geekly often. And Geekly does a lot of like comedy podcasts and one-shot comedy D&Ds. So if you're looking for some brevity in your life, go ahead and do that. Otherwise, most of the shout-outs I already gave out to. Check out Encounter Party and Utility Muffin Labs. They actually have some good podcasts. I enjoy what they'd said before in a few of their shows, but also Postmortem Gaming. As another one that's up and coming, where they're doing with Raymond Jenkins, and they're reviewing different V5 products and things like that. But yeah, that's it. I mean, God, I could listen to Dia Morte metal. That's what we should do. Check out Dia Morte's album, The Red Opera. Red Opera. That is the biggest shout I can have. You can listen to it on Spotify. You can go to YouTube and find it. It is symphonic metal. It is epic, and there's an entire DD campaign based off it.
So now you just real quick, you got me really thinking about. I want to touch base with the Lords of Trident and see if we can work out a same kind of like. I love that concept of just taking their music and let's make a campaign based on this.
Yeah, it is totally doable. I pitched. I had Drake Mephisto and Paul Allender in my kitchen. Paul Allender from Cradle of Filth, Drake Mephisto from Dia Morte. They were in my kitchen. We were having Paul's very British. We were having some whiskey, and they were talking about how hard it is as metal and musicians these days to get noticed, to get out there, to break without. And I'm like, why don't you guys write a D&D campaign? I mean, you got an entire storyline. You have a full epic. You have opera and symphony, and you're metal. Like, you're symphonic metal, man. Come on, like it fits. Like, I would storytell to your instrumental music anyway. Everybody got really quiet in the room, and they looked at me, and I went, I'm writing this now, aren't I?
That's awesome.
So, and that's how it began.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for coming on to the podcast here. It's been great having you on. Hopefully we'll see you around again down the bend and hear about more of the epic stuff that you've been working on. So it's always great having you on. So this is Frozen Fallout signing off.
Motorori signing off.
I'm going to have whiskey as soon as I can get away from this computer. But yes, this is Rick signing off.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, and you have a great day.